Hosea 13. So it talks about how Ephraim was kind of like an old son that's not very wise. He exalted himself and then worshipped Baal, and through that incurred guilt and died. God has been their God since the land of Egypt, and they were supposed to only know God, and there is no save for. So this is the reason why God doesn't want them to know any other idol, any other small gods, because there is no Savior beside God. He cared for them in the wilderness, but then when they had their pasture, they became satisfied, and when they became satisfied, their heart became proud. And I think this is like a theme among the rise and fall of nations. When prosperity comes, that's when the nation goes into moral decay, and America is not an exception. And so they forgot God, and like America, we start to take God out of our courthouse, our politic, our schools. And then God said that it is to their own destruction that you are against God, against your help. God is there to help them. If they are against God, they lose their help. Where then is your king, that he might save you? They wanted a king, and then after that, God gave him a king, but then God also took him away. So then God says that Ephraim is not a wise son. Then they're pretty much, these are the judgment that will befall them because they went into idolatry and against God. And when I read this, like, some people might read this and say, oh, because they turn away from God, now God will take their children and slaughter their children, and he will rip their pregnant woman open. I don't think that, like, that is the image of an angry God, a God of vengeance that people have in their mind. But when I read it, that's not what I read at all. I read that God has been protecting them from these invaders, from people who wants to ruin their life, from people who wants to hurt them, like ripping their pregnant woman open, from wickedness. He was protecting them from evil. And then when they refuse his help, when they turn away from God, and God doesn't want God in their life anymore, then he said, I'll leave. And when he leaves, his hand of protection leaves, and then the evil rushes in. And that's why they're faced with all this thing that are wicked, that it's like it's allowed now into their life. Nothing can touch a child of God unless he allows it. And when he takes away his hand of protection, everything, all the wickedness that can happen is permissible. And all of these hurt and pain are there because he allowed it now to happen to them. He's not having a barrier. He's not saying these are mine and I'm protecting them anymore. He lifted the barrier of protection and just wickedness come in. And so that is what I see. That is the repercussion of wanting God out. And that's something that we need to be very careful of, and we need to understand that God is a loving Father. He's not going to do this to you. He's not going to rip your pregnant wife open because he wants vengeance on you because you don't love him. That's not who he is. He doesn't want that to happen, but he will let it happen if it gets to a point where you then recognizes your need for him and turn back to him, because he's in the business of saving souls. He wants to save your soul. Your life can be a little bit messed up. Your life can have a lot of hardship and pain, but ultimately, is your soul going to be saved? Because he is after your soul.